It is 10 past 3 in the morning, and you are awake again. You know exactly how tomorrow is supposed to go. The alarm is set for 7. You mapped the whole day out before you got into bed, and all you have to do now is be unconscious for 4 more hours. And you can't. You reach for the phone. Before you have decided to, the screen scalds your eyes. 3:11, you put it face down on the nightstand like that will fix something. And then you start the arithmetic. 4 hours if you fall asleep right now. 3.5 if you lie here doing this. And underneath all of it is the quiet thought. The one you have had 100 times. Something is broken in me. Take away artificial light from a healthy adult, and within a few weeks, their sleep splits cleanly in two, with a long, calm wakefulness sitting in the middle of the night. That is not folklore. It happened to 15 people in a laboratory in Maryland in a study run by a psychiatrist called Thomas Wehr, and the researchers watched it happen night after night after night. Hold on to that, because it will change what you think that wake-up is. Start with the explanation you have already been given, because everybody reaches for it first. You are tired because you are busy, because of the screens, the caffeine, the hours. All of that is real, and none of it explains the strangest part of this, which is that the 3 in the morning wake-up is not new. Historians have found people describing it in writing for hundreds of years, before electricity, before alarm clocks, before a single human being on Earth had ever seen a glowing rectangle in the dark. So the wake-up is older than everything we blame it on. Which brings us back to Maryland and to the most quietly radical sleep experiment ever run on modern people. Wehr gave his volunteers 14 hours of darkness a night, every night, for a month. No lamps, no reading, just the amount of night a human being would have had. For almost all of the 200,000 years our species has existed. For the first 2 weeks, they slept enormously, paying off a debt nobody knew they were carrying. And then, their sleep settled into a shape almost nobody alive had ever seen. They fell asleep. They slept solidly for around 4 hours. And then, they woke up, not groggily, not in distress. They lay there, calmly, fully conscious, for 1 to 3 hours. Then they fell asleep again for another 4 hours and woke for the day. 2 sleeps, with a door standing open in the middle. And here is where it gets genuinely strange. In that gap, their bodies were doing something specific. Blood levels of prolactin, the hormone your body produces during deep rest and quiet contentment, climbed and stayed high for the entire interval. The researchers found that the state looked closer to meditation than to insomnia. Those brains were not failing to sleep. They were in a third state entirely, and it does have a name. Sleep researchers call it segmented sleep or biphasic sleep. Almost nobody alive has ever been told they are doing it. Now, that raises a question the experiment alone cannot answer, and it is the one everybody asks the moment they hear about this. Why then? Why that specific hour, in the dead middle of the night, and not at 1 or at 5? It is written into your circadian rhythm, the roughly 24-hour clock running in every cell you own, and the clearest signal it sends is temperature. Your core temperature is not fixed. Sleep researchers have found that it falls through the evening, bottoms out roughly 4 hours before you would naturally wake, and climbs again towards morning. That trough is the coldest, the slowest, the deepest point of your night. And sleep is not one continuous substance either. Laboratory studies of sleep architecture show it running in cycles, roughly 90 minutes each, every one of them climbing out of deep sleep towards the surface. And after about 4 hours, 3 of those cycles have finished stacking. So somewhere near that temperature minimum, you rise to the surface of a cycle. At the exact moment, your body has finished its heaviest work. That is not a malfunction in the machine. That is a seam in it. And for most of human history, there was nothing there to stop you drifting through it. The room was dark. There was nowhere to be. Before we go further, I want something from you, because this next part is going to land very personally for some people. If you wake in the night at roughly the same time, and you have always assumed that was a fault in you, then put the time you wake in the comments. According to the pattern in this research, those numbers should cluster hard. I would like to watch it happen in real time. But here's the thing, a laboratory is a laboratory. 15 people in artificial darkness is a beautiful result and a small one. What turns it from a curiosity into a rewriting of the record is what a university historian found. He went looking for the same shape in ordinary documents. His name is Roger Ekirch, a professor of history at Virginia Tech. He was not researching sleep at all. He was researching night. Over 16 years of analysis, he worked through court depositions, diaries, medical texts, and prayer manuals. And he kept tripping over 2 phrases nobody had ever bothered to explain, because at the time, nobody needed them explained. First sleep and second sleep. Not as metaphors at all. As ordinary furniture, the way we might write about lunch. A woman in a legal deposition describes a crime committed after her first sleep. A physician recommends that couples conceive after the first sleep, when both parties have more enjoyment. A prayer manual supplies something to say during the interval. Ekirch found the phrase repeated more than 500 times, across a dozen languages, across several centuries. Nobody was explaining it, Nobody was arguing about it. Nobody was complaining about it. They were living inside it, the way you live inside, the idea of a weekend, which leaves the question of what people actually did with a spare hour in the middle of a dark night. And it is beautifully mundane. They talked. They lay in the dark with whoever was next to them and worked through the day, the debts, the children. They prayed in a slot specifically set aside for it. They had sex at an hour when nobody was exhausted from a day of physical labor, which is exactly what that physician was recommending. Some got up and tended a fire or stitched something by the embers. And a great many of them simply thought. An hour of unstructured, unlit, uninterrupted consciousness with no obligation attached to it, which is a thing that almost none of us have ever had. So the obvious question is what killed it. And it was not a person or a decision or a policy. It was a slow flood of light. According to Ekirch's analysis, the turn begins in the early 1800s. That is when gaslighting arrives on city streets. First in London, then everywhere that could afford it. And light did something tonight that nobody planned. It pushed the evening later. Coffee houses stayed open. Theaters ran late. Work stretched past sunset because now it could. Within about 50 years, the window of darkness had narrowed from 14 hours towards 8, and a night that short has no room for a gap in the middle. 2 sleeps got compressed into 1. You can watch the phrases die in the written record. They thin out through the 17 and 1800s. In the cities first, where the lamps came first. Then they follow the light outward until they drop out of the language completely. 2 words that everybody understood for centuries became 2 words nobody could parse. So a comfortable picture is forming here, and I want to break it. Did they actually sleep better than us? Because there is a version of this story that is extremely popular and completely wrong. It says they did. It says that before we ruined everything, everybody got a long, luxurious, unbroken night, and modern life stole it. And this is where the story takes a turn that almost nobody expects. The people who tested that claim went to the last places on Earth where you can still measure it. 3 groups, on 2 continents, all living without electricity. The Hadzu in Tanzania, the San in Namibia, the Chimane in Bolivia. 94 people wore monitors, day and night, for weeks. And they did not sleep more than us. They slept less, between 5.7 and 7.1 hours a night. That sits at, or below, the modern average. And almost none of them slept straight through the dark. That study was led by Jerome Seigel, published in the journal Current Biology in 2015, and it is the single most inconvenient result in this entire field because it kills the fantasy. They were not getting more sleep, and they were not getting better sleep. What they had was a night that was allowed to have a shape, instead of a night with a target. If that has already rearranged something for you, hit the like button. It genuinely helps this reach the people lying awake right now. So look at the whole climb. A wake up in the small hours that predates every modern thing we blame for it. A laboratory that reproduced that exact wake up on demand, simply by giving people back their darkness. A hormone confirming the state is restful rather than broken. A temperature trough and a stack of 90-minute cycles that put a seam in your night whether you like it or not. 500 written references to a 2-part night that everybody once understood. A quiet hour used for talking and praying and thinking until gaslight squeezed it out of existence. And a set of measurements from people living without electricity, proving they never had the unbroken 8 hours. The 8 hours the rest of us are all failing to achieve. So here is what that 3 in the morning wake up actually was, all along. It was never the problem at all. What happened is that the gap lost its name, and anything without a name that keeps showing up eventually gets treated as a symptom. So when exactly did an ordinary hour become a disorder? It became one the moment it was written down as one. Waking in the night is now a clinical category with a clinical label, sleep maintenance insomnia. It got a market. Researchers tracking that market now count roughly 9 million people in the United States alone, taking prescription sleep medication, many of them for a wake-up their great-great-grandparents would have recognized instantly and thought nothing of. And that is where the real damage lives, because it is not in the waking. When you surface at 3 and think something is wrong, your body believes you. Alarm raises cortisol. Cortisol raises heart rate. It sharpens attention, it pushes body temperature up, which are the 4 things most likely to stop you falling asleep again. The fear of not sleeping is a better stimulant than the waking ever was. So you lie there, manufacturing the exact state you are afraid of, and then you count the hours you are losing, which manufactures more of it. Your body opens a door it has been opening for thousands of years, and you lie in the dark, doing arithmetic, treating an ordinary piece of your night as evidence that you are broken. If you know somebody who wakes at 3 and quietly believes something is wrong with them, send them this. That belief is the only part of it doing any real damage. So, it is 10 past 3 in the morning, and you are awake. The phone is face down on the nightstand. The room is dark. Nothing is chasing you. Nothing hurts. And there is no reason to move for hours. Wehr's volunteers spent this exact hour calm and awake and perfectly well. Ekirch's letter, writers used it to talk and pray and get on with their marriages. The Hadzu and the San and the Chimane pass through it every night of their lives without once calling it a disorder. You are not lying awake in the wreckage of a good night's sleep. You are lying in the doorway between two of them.